Hello, good morning, and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. It does appear that the EC is heeding to a clarion call to rate its register, quote unquote, register of moribund, defaulting political parties that exist only on the books here in Accra against the dictates of the law. So the EC may be brazing the odds to get rid of these political parties that exist sometimes in one individual, and in Accra, bought and paid by the wealthier parties, particularly ruling parties, to make up the numbers at IPAC to vote for them. But is that what we need in our democratic experiments? As we try to create a smart society and economy, the Ghana card is becoming very essential to life. So what is this fight, quarrel, or tiff about a law in the offing requiring only Ghana card for voter registration? We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini. And this morning, my take, I title it, Towards Giving the Poor Justice. A.G. Damis lead. Towards Giving the Poor Justice. A.G. Damis lead. Great and refreshing things are happening in the legal front. Just in the same way, any objective observer will not miss the digitization and digitalization agenda of the government. The agenda, as led by the Vice President, is deliberate and purposeful. It is the future. The impact, including making life a lot better and creating a smart economy, cannot be lost on anyone. I've written about the formalization of the jurisprudence of plea bargain by a recent amendment of our criminal laws. It may be benefiting the rich a lot more, but restorative justice ought to be preferred to throwing people into jail and not recovering the loot and or getting compensation for the victims. In the plea bargain, you simply plead guilty to the charges if you are not lucky and are put before a court. You engage and agree with the Attorney General or the prosecution. If they accept your plan to pay what you stole, pay it back to the state, plus interest, or what the law calls reparation or compensation for the victim. Of course, murder is excluded. Sexual offenses like rape and defilement are excluded. So if you do them, you do not have the opportunity of saying Yes, I admit I'm sorry, and then you pay and go free. Money cannot compensate for that kind of wickedness. So, the tag of ex-convicts is left on you. But what you don't get to do is put in jail and suffer in a jail. I have insisted, and I insist now, that the AG must, with the same speed, pass the community sentencing law, long advocated for by the CDD and other key players, and now pursued even more vigorously by the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, because that is the plea bargain for the poor man who steals plantain just to be able to eat. We don't have to be throwing some of these people into jail. All we need is to give them some punishment within the community. Let them do some work and go free. Let's not put them in jail where we can't even afford to feed them. We are feeding them on less than 2 cedis a day, a whole day. That clearly is not what should be done. Now, the good news is that unlike situations where we had to leave Martin Kpebu, for example, to go to the court and fight for the Domestic Violence Victim Support Fund to be established so that victims can be compensated or can be supported to go through their traumatic experiences. This time, the Attorney General is leading a process to ensure that we have established the Legal Aid Commission and Law Reform Funds, established by law, but for a long time we have abandoned them. Just in the same way as I have spoken about the Whistleblowers Act. There's a fund for the whistleblower so that you blow the whistle on corruption, then you are likely to get as much as 10% of the proceeds. So these are two important institutions, the Legal Aid Commission and the Law Reform Commission. The Constitution says when you are restricted, when you are arrested, when you are detained by law enforcement, you have a right to be told in a language that you understand what your crime is or your offense is. And the next thing is to be told about your right to a lawyer of your own choice. A lawyer of your choice. Truth, the poor often cannot afford the services of a lawyer. Well, we are not training enough of them. There's no space. So, the Legal Aid Commission need funds to be able to work, and yet it doesn't have enough. It has very small staff. Now, a fund is going to be set up by Wednesday, the 10th of August, 2022, and the launch will be done by the President. And I believe that this deserves all the support we can give. Almost 80% of the lawyers that get out of law school don't go to their towns and villages. They stay in Accra. What that means is that there are places where the poor cannot even access a lawyer. There are regions where there's only one lawyer working for the entire Attorney General setup. The legal aid deserve all the support. And as this fund is being launched, I plead with all of you to let us help to populate the fund with money so that poor people can get representation. There are especially women who are violated in the most horrendous ways and they have no way of defending themselves. It's the Legal Aid Commission that comes to their aid. There are several of them who call on lawyers every day but don't get the support they need. Let's help to empower the Legal Aid Commission to fight for the poor and vulnerable. And that is my take. Now, this show is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Waylead Properties, home is where one stars. And Funnet, Ghana, think wood, think Funnet. Duraplus, where Duraplus goes, water flows. Star Assurance, your solid partner. St. Thomas Eye Hospital, your #1 specialist in all your eye solutions. We will be taking a very quick break, and when we return, I will introduce you to my guest, Dr. Srebu Okweku, Director, Electoral Services at the Electoral Commission. Kofi Bentil is a lawyer and Senior Vice President Imani Africa. They have done some case seeking to compel the Electoral Commission to do the right thing about the moribund and defaulting political parties that exist only in the books here in Accra. But it does appear nothing has been done over the years, but something now appears to be done. Is it good or bad? Elvis Efrie Ankra is Director of Elections, the National Democratic Congress, and Nanaya Jantwa is General Secretary, Convention People's Party, that's the CPP. Dr. John Osai Kwapong, the Research Matters man, political scientist, democracy and development fellow at the CDD Ghana, will also join us. Join us with your views as well. Should these parties that exist only in Accra and on the books of the EC, sometimes just existing in the name of one individual, in contravention of what the law requires, should they be scrapped? Should they get off the ballot so that the next time you probably may see only 2 or 3 parties on the ballot? Let's know what you think. How about the Ghana card becoming the potential, if you like, only means to be eligible to register to vote in elections? Let's have your views. We'll be right back.
Parties will just be existing in names, so that when you have an IPAC, they will just come, but you go to the district or the constituency level, they are not there. To have offices in all parts of the country, currently Ghana has 16 regions. We have the national capital, Accra is also there. Then we have almost 267 or so districts, and the constituencies are 275. Right. So if a smaller political party will have to rent, you are looking at over 300 locations, almost 300 locations to rent in these places. And averagely, if they are even supposed to pay, let's say 5,000 in rent per year for each location, that's a lot of money. So I think it's also a major challenge which we have to look at. But you look at the size of a country like Ghana, maybe do we need all these political parties for a population of around almost 32 million? Right. Do you need almost 30 political parties, or maybe some 8 political parties, some 10 political parties who are ready to meet the requirements should be allowed to operate without any impediment? So the commission will look at all that. For this particular function where you are in charge of cracking the whip, I don't know a situation whereby a teacher will be assessing the students to determine those who have passed and those who have not passed, and the teacher will engage the students to let them know why. No, obviously there should be a criteria which should be known by all, that you are supposed to meet A, B, C, and D. You are supposed to have a well-functioning district office at least 2/3 of our districts, you are supposed to be having a functional, regional, national office. Once those indicators are very clear, and before we embarked on the exercise, we wrote to the political parties to inform them that the EC will be going on the field to be able to check all this.
The stability of our country, since it borders on the right of a Ghanaian citizen to vote and to exercise that inalienable right to vote. Our understanding as we pick it up is that the Electoral Commission of Ghana is desperately planning to discard the 2020 voter register and replace it with a new voter register, which register is cost the taxpayer and the people of Ghana to build with $80 million thereabout. Our understanding is that the Electoral Commission is seeking to make the national ID card the only source of justification to register onto the voter ID card as their basis, the voter register. Our concern primarily is that in the past, since 1993, voter registration exercises that have been undertaken, you normally have the provision of a guarantor of other persons guaranteeing for persons to get onto the voter register insofar as it is established that they are Ghanaian and are of age and of sound mind and to participate in Ghana's electoral process to vote and be voted for.
There's no one we are asking. About 80 million in Ghana cities now will be about 400 and almost 500 million. And our budget for this year is not even up to 20% of that. So clearly there is no truth to that. Currently we've sent the document, the CI on the registration of voters to Parliament, and what the Commission, based on interactions with our political parties as well as civil society, you know, IPAC is made up of the EC and political parties, but we have civil society organizations that have observer status. We had plenty discussions with them, and last year too we had a meeting in one of the hotels of the political parties, civil society, for 2 days, and it was agreed that now that the Ghana card has made a lot of impact in our society, as we speak now, almost 17 million of our people, of Ghanaians, have registered for the Ghana card. So the Commission, in collaboration with our partners, took the decision that now let's have the Ghana card as the main requirement. So what this means is that as soon as you acquire your Ghana card with the continuous registration, you just go to our district office, the district where you are located. So let's say you reside in, let's say, Tema, right. Tema Central. As soon as you acquire your Ghana card, then you go to our office in Tema Central, then you go and register, then your name will be put on the roll of voters. Basically, that's what we are doing. And you know, the Ghana card is acquired at the age of 15 based on the information they put out there. Yeah. So what we are saying is that we should encourage people, go ahead and get your Ghana card. As soon as you turn 18, then you present it to the registration officer, and instantly you are going to be registered. And when you look at Ghana's population, we are looking at those who have attained the age of 18. Those are the people who register to vote. And I made the point earlier that the Ghana card is acquired at the age of 15. And this continuous registration, we are not registering all Ghanaians. Okay. We are only registering Ghanaians who have turned 18 since the last registration exercise. And when you look at what the experts tell us in terms of the numbers, the number of people who turn 18 every year will be about 400 to 550,000. So as we speak now, we are looking in a year, we are looking at almost about 900,000 or so people who have not registered. So we are not registering all Ghanaians in the continuous registration exercise. We are only registering those who didn't get the chance to register in 2020 and those who have turned 18 since the last registrations. And what we are saying is that acquire the Ghana card. And this exercise is continuous till the next elections. So you know, next year we have the district level elections, which will probably be between maybe September to November, thereabout. So we are going to be registering Ghanaians from when we begin till that time. Then when we have the elections, then we come back again. So we have a space of almost 2 years or more.
You're welcome back, and you've been listening to the Electoral Commission's Dr. Bosman Asare, and you've also heard Haruna Idrisu, the minority leader in Parliament, expressing some concerns. In the course of this week, we have heard very significant persons, including former EC boss, Dr. Afarijan, say, among other things, that, quote, Ghanaian citizens don't lose their citizenship if they are 18 years or older, but do not have the Ghana card. So the moot question is, why make the Ghana card the only means of identification for purposes of establishing eligibility to register to vote? It says one way to dodge this problem is to use a voters register that is not polling station specific on election day. Until such time that the BVDs are configured to be interactive in this way, my concern about any of the two registers being used at the polling station on election day is that it opens the door more widely to two kinds of voting infractions, namely multiple voting and ballot stuffing. And I suspect these are some of the issues that the political parties are concerned, and also the democracy and good governance watchers are concerned about. So once again, welcome to Newsfile, and my guest, Dr. Sribo Kweku, Director, Electoral Services at the Electoral Commission. Kofi Bentil is lawyer and Senior Vice President in Mani Africa. Elvis Afriankra, right here in the studio, Director of Elections, National Democratic Congress, is here. Nana Ya Achempem Jantwa, a General Secretary, Convention People's Party, the CPP, and Dr. John Sai Kwapong, Political Scientist, Democracy and Development Fellow at the CDD Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Newsfile.
Good morning.
Right.
Good morning, thank you.
Let's begin on this note. We are very thankful that Dr. Sribo Kweku is able to join us. But let's begin on this note to hear why there is this opposition to the LI that is being proposed to be tabled in Parliament. At the moment, it's at the committee's level, we understand, to be tabled in Parliament for a potential change in the way we organize elections. Now, the provision of the LI proposed that is getting all this attention is this particular one. It says that a person who applies for registration as a voter shall provide as evidence of identification the national identification card issued by the National Identification Authority. That appears to be the problematic provision. And this is found in, I think that's in the section Regulation 1, Regulation 3. So, first of all, as a major stakeholder, you have just issued a statement. We've seen the statement by your chairman of your party, Ofosu Ampofo. What is the problem with this LI?
Thank you very much, and good morning to all our viewers and listeners. Let's begin with what I'll call the fundamentals.
Right.
So, the Electoral Commission was created to serve a particular purpose, and everything that we do should be based on the Constitution. If you look at Article 42 of the Constitution, and I read, it says, every citizen of Ghana of 18 years of age or above and of sound mind has the right to vote. and is entitled, very critical, entitled, so it's an entitlement, to be registered as a voter for the purposes of public elections and referenda. So it is an entitlement. Then you come to 45. 45 talks about the functions of the commission, but E says to undertake programs for the expansion of the registration of voters. So if you look at these two provisions, it tells you that the framers of the Constitution had a certain motive in mind about the functions and the role of the Electoral Commission. First of all, the citizens that attain 18 are entitled, and the Electoral Commission has to make provision, create a conducive and congenial atmosphere to facilitate that registration. Now, what we are saying is that with this Ghana card proposition that they are making, first of all, if you look at the numbers, and the statistics is not even consistent, but what we have is that as of July, based on Ghana card NIA statistics, 16,654,072 people have been enrolled. 13,317,612 have been issued, and 3,023,918 have not been issued with their Ghana card. So there is a challenge, there is a problem. Now, the EC is always talking about its independence. And yet the EC is relying on another state entity, which is the NIA, whose CEO is appointed by the government, reports directly to the president. The EC has no control over the functions of the NIA, and yet is depending on that NIA card and making it the sole document. And if you look at the statistics, it shows clearly that over the years, they've not been able to meet their own targets. So what is the guarantee? That at the end of the day, by the time they open the register, limited registration, it's time to vote, people who have turned 18 would have received their Ghana. This is trite logic. And that is why over the years, since 1993, provision is made that apart from the primary document, which in this case will be the NIA card, there should be some provision for other documents. And in the past, it was a driver's license, it was the Ghanaian passport, and the guarantor system. These are all systems that have been put in place to facilitate and make it easier for people to register. But this is insistence on an NIA card whose rollout is still ongoing with a lot of challenges, numerous challenges. I mean, the NIA themselves say that they have thousands of cards, they don't even know how to identify the people. The process, I mean, there are certain areas that you don't have network connectivity. There's so many challenges. These challenges have not been addressed. So why is the EC insisting that it is only that NIA card that will be used for subsequent registrations? That is the crux of the matter.
Every year when we are getting to elections, the EC goes to Parliament to promulgate an LI to guide the elections. Mm-hmm. This time, they are doing it far in advance, so that is good enough. We have had situations where the LI comes just late in the day. Mm-hmm. And remember, during Afarajan's time, I think that was his last days, the LI that was made that omitted journalists to be given the opportunity to vote before election day. Before we knew, it had been passed, so you couldn't do anything about it. Now, your concern is that because the NIA has not yet captured all citizens, that's the reason using the NIA card, the Ghana card, is untenable. Mm-hmm. That's the basic concern.
So let me reiterate what I said. So you are insisting that the Ghana card should be the sole document for identification.
Right.
NIA over the years has had a plan to roll out. Don't forget that they told us that they were going to do instant issuing. They've not been able to do that. And based on their own projections, if you look at the numbers.
I got my card in 2018.
Okay.
Instant issuers.
Okay, but now it's a difficulty. When you go out there, you see the queues, you see the chaos. Okay, so there is no guarantee that they'll be able to issue out all these cards before the elections. And when an EC whose mandate is to create a conducive and congenial atmosphere to facilitate easy access to registration for people. Whatever provisions they put in must be reasonable. Whether it's 1 year ahead of time, 2 years ahead of time, it has to be reasonable. This is not reasonable because the card you are depending on, the people who are supposed to give the card are not even ready. And Atefua recently, even with regards to the SIM card, said they will not be able to deploy so many cards. So there are issues and there are challenges about the ability of the NIA to deploy the cards within a certain time period. They've not even given us any guarantees. And indeed, if they even gave us guarantees, we cannot take them by their word because per their own proclamations earlier that they were going to do this within a certain period of time, they've not been able to do that. Yes. That is why for any reasonable person, if there's no ulterior motive, if there is no, why is it that in the past there's always provision being made that, look, in spite of the primary documents, you should have backup so that just in case somebody hasn't got that primary document, there is that opportunity for the person to register. Is that not a very reasonable, proposition to make?
You like the idea that we are rolling out the Ghana card.
Oh yes, we are not interested.
At the time, even the health insurance card was part of the identifiers. And through the Abu Ramadan line of cases, the Supreme Court struck it out. Now, in that decision, the Supreme Court had this to say. I want to hear what you have to say about it. Georgina Wood, who was Chief Justice, she's the one who wrote the judgment. And she concluded, a very last paragraph, that the need for a credible and reliable multipurpose national identification system comprising the relevant data and communication infrastructure that would answer to most of our national needs, whether for electoral, planning, or developmental, or other purposes, is greater than ever before. We think the time has come for the appropriate authorities to respond to this need. You agree with this?
I agree, but what does it mean in this context?
When do we get to this place?
Basic common sense. At least let's finish with the NIA processes that we are sure that every Ghanaian, okay, the statistics says those who have enrolled, those who have been issued, those not issued, at least let's finish that process. And even after that process, there must be provision. After this ruling, when they took out the NIA, what were some of the other documents? The passport, the driving license, and then an existing voter ID card. And when it comes to enrollment on any database, Ghana is not an island. There are international standards, international provisions that determine how this is done. So Ghana is not an island. In every jurisdiction, when it comes to enrollment, there is a primary document and there is a secondary document. You can check all over the world. So what is this insistence on a Ghana card whose rollout is still not over? A Ghana card who the NIA themselves give us a schedule, give us a timetable they've not been able to fulfill. So common sense and logic will tell you that within the next 2 years, many people who are otherwise eligible would not have received their Ghana card. And so you are denying those people the opportunity to vote, to register to vote. And the law that set you up says that your job, 45E says, you must undertake programs for the expansion of the registration of voters. And what you are doing will rather limit registration of voters. Now let's talk about the challenges of the Ghana card itself. Many people, especially in the rural areas, where network connectivity is a challenge, are having difficulty. I'm sure your team have gone around and they've seen the queues of people and the chaos at the various Ghana card registration centers.
On the Ghana card processes so far, we have these slides about the updates, and we'll share them with you so you can follow what is going on at the NIA itself and the numbers they've been able to register or capture so far, and cards they have been able to issue, and how much of the population of 30.8 million is left to be captured out of the number that they intend to capture at the age of 15. So we have a total population of 30.8 million. That's who we are in Ghana. and the population of 15 years plus eligible to receive, register, and get a card, 19.9 million. 19.9 million. As you can see over there, so the Ghana card says at a certain point what we had was 15.7 million cards had been issued, 15.7 million. Remember that it is 19.9 of the population that are eligible to receive, and 15.7 million is what has been issued. There is 4.2 million more to be issued. My question, to register and to be issued. My question to you, there are those who even have an updated figure of 17 million, which brings the figure even less.
No, but Samson,
is it possible?
Samson,
pause. Can I ask this
We're
question?
dealing with statistics.
Yes. Is it possible?
I have my figures here. It talks about 16.654 million enrolled, 13.317612
yes.
issued, 3 million not issued.
You have 60. You have 60 million
yes.
plus.
And
we are using a data
very
of 15 million
and
plus.
then the
Electoral Commission has received a data of 17 million plus. My question to you is, the number that is left, granted it was even 4 million left who are eligible, and all that 4 million is not a voting population. Is it possible to find other means to ensure that these people get registered, get their ID cards, so that they are able to register before election 2024?
Okay. So first of all, to answer your question, these 16 million, within what period, or 17 million, within what period were they registered? What was the target of the NIA for that registration? They set a target, okay, and they were not able to meet that target. So what is the guarantee that the rest of the people, they'll be able to register them within whatever they tell you, they'll be able to register them? There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee. So based on that, that is why we, way back, 1st December 2021, the NDC wrote to the NIA, request for information on the number of persons registered and the number of cards issued as at 31st October 2021. The National Democratic Congress extends its compliments to you. We would be grateful if you could provide us with information on the following. 1, the total number of Ghanaians registered by the National Identification Authority as at 31st October 2021, the total number of non-Ghanaians registered as of October 31st, 2021, the total registration figures by administrative regions and district as of October 31st, 2021, statistics on documents used as proof of citizenship prior to registration as of October 31st, 2021. And then we thank them. They've not responded to this. This is a state institution paid by the taxpayer. The NDC is the biggest opposition party.
All right.
In the,
so
in the country. Let me
go on the phone now.
Let me just go on the phone. It's important I land. Okay, we have 2 hours. So when I'm making a point, you have to allow me to land. It won't take 2 minutes. Let me land.
Let me tell you this. Let me tell you this for starters.
It is important that I land. I cannot be speaking, okay, and I'm just about to land. Yeah, but I'm just about to land.
Now I want you to know something. I just want you to know something. Just hold on. I'll let you speak. I just want you to know something. There's actually a reason I have elected to allow you to speak at this length.
Yes.
All my guests may not get the opportunity to speak as long as you have done.
Very good.
Because we believe that if the NDC was in agreement, we may not be having this discussion.
Good.
So I want you to appreciate that I've actually given you more than it may be necessary to speak.
Okay.
So please, just conclude that.
Very good. So I appreciate you giving me more time, but it's important that when I'm making a point, in the middle of the point, when I have just 30 seconds, I must conclude so that it will make sense.
You were done before I was about to move on.
So going forward, we want the NIA to respond to this letter and supply all the political parties with this data. We need this information. We need to know which districts have more people registered, because something funny is going on. A lot of our MPs, Kwame Agboja gave some frightening statistics.
I heard him.
In his district, less than 20% of the people have not been registered. And the challenges are more in the rural areas. If you look at our rural our statistics of our population, majority of the population...
You meant to say less than 20% have registered?
Yes.
Okay.
Or have received their cards.
That's right.
Whichever way it is. And if you look at Ghanaian population, the rural-urban dichotomy, there are more people in the rural areas that are in our strongholds. So we are seeing a certain trend. So we are saying, NIA, give us the information, we'll look at it, we'll analyze it, then we can have a more meaningful conversation. But you cannot force our hand to agree to something when you are not meeting your very basic targets.
Thank you. Now, before I go to the Electoral Commission, Kofi Bento, thank you for your time. What do you make of the current debate?
Thank you, Samson. Do you hear me?
Yes, please.
So the current debate is exactly because we have an electoral commission, which has essentially become a pernicious institution. It refuses to do what is written in the law. It arrogates to itself powers it does not have. It creates an unnecessary cost and stress on this country. And you have political parties like NDC and co. It wouldn't even respond to them. So this debate, if you check, in the past about 4 election cycles, we almost every time have a strained debate about registration. And here we are again. And it doesn't make any sense. If I have some time, I'll just read you what the Constitution says, compile a register. And in Tenadi, it was made sufficiently clear to the Electoral Commission that your job is to facilitate voting. Your job is not to do things to make people lose their right to vote. It is the other way. And you have a situation where this Electoral Commission chooses not to listen to the law, not to listen to even the main parties. We have a judgment against the EC to do things it refuses to do. And then it just goes ahead and does what it wants to do. When we go in, we will look at some of these details about why the EC is becoming a lawless institution and sends us around these things every 4 years. God has kept this country from a civil war. The EC is tempting fate. And we should stop it at a point.
Kofi,
it refuses to be audited. Nobody knows the extent of its assets.
Kofi, can we speak to the specific issue at hand? They are seeking to bring an ally by which people who have turned 18 since the last elections and before the next elections will have to be registered and added to the list of the register. They are not seeking to create a new register. They are seeking to add on those who have become qualified. And they are saying that by their information, 17 million of Ghanaians aged 15 and above have their ID cards. In that regard, there's a small number left. And the numbers you intend to register by every year who turn 18 after the last election will be less than 500,000. So, what is wrong with this approach?
If they are seeking to add people, what it means is that all those who have already registered will not be excluded through this arrangement.
That's correct.
But you have a situation where they are passing a law that says you will only be eligible, essentially, if you have registered with a Ghana card. That is patently illegal. Because the Constitution does not say so. The Constitution says that identify the person. And the Constitution is a right. It says every citizen. And if we have time, you should just read Tenadi. Tenadi solved these problems and said that the right to vote is a constitutionally guaranteed right. You cannot use administrative law, whether it is there or it is not there, to remove it. So if what you're saying is what is true, then all of us who have registered so far will still be valid if we don't re-register. And that the rest who have to register should come with a Ghana card. That itself is wrong. Because the Constitution does not require a Ghana card. The Constitution says that identify, be shown that you are a Ghanaian. Any means by which you can show that you are a Ghanaian is valid. If you read the various CIs, it shows that the election officer should just confirm that you are a Ghanaian and of sound mind, the things that you need to do, and that you are on the register. And the important part about the EC's register is this. The EC in the Constitution is asked to compile a register. Compiling means it exists already. The EC is a commission. There is an authority today in this country that is supposed to create an identity document. So you can compile it from there. Part of why we have this problem is the abject failure of the NIA to complete its simple mission all these years. And I like the fact that you read Georgina Wood's judgment that we have needed this thing all these years, and we have spent enough money. I don't know why it should be this difficult to issue ID cards in this country for all these years. So that is one of the reasons. If we had an NIA that had issued all these cards, then it would be easy for the EC to compile the list from that card. But even if they did, it does not stop a citizen who can prove that he is a citizen from voting if they don't have the Ghana card. The Ghana card is not your proof of citizenship. It is just a document that confirms it.
Kofi, you know that beyond the constitutional provision, there is the need for a mechanism. And that is why over the years, we have looked for mechanisms to, as it were, operationalize the Constitution, which says identify the individual as 18 of sound mind and a citizen of Ghana so they can vote. And
Right.
the Supreme Court has not even only said that the right to vote is a constitutionally guaranteed one. It has moved beyond that to agree with what is now world standard, that it is a fundamental human right. And that's
Yes.
why through Churchill, now prisoners can vote.
Yes.
So
let me deal with that. So you are saying what it says is that there must be a system where you can show what you really are.
Exactly.
So Samson, I agree with you that we need an administrative procedure to do that. But what we must tell everybody is that the administrative procedure does not replace your rights. And that what you are saying is that we must figure out a way to prove what is already in existence.
So that, for example, Kofi, you cannot say, Tenade is a classic example that even if it is one individual, his right must not be denied. But Kofi,
Yes.
the point is here. Well, the Supreme Court has actually stopped a whole election process for
Yes.
district assemblies because one
Yes.
person's right was at stake. And we lost
Yes.
millions in that process.
Yes.
But Kofi, the point is that, what are you saying? Are you saying that if I don't get registered, I can show up at any voting center any day and say, because I'm Ghanaian, I have to be allowed to vote? That would be chaos. So that's
You
why we
can't
need the
say
systems.
that. No, you can't say that. So you should, let's disaggregate what you're saying. Your citizenship is in existence already. We need an administrative system to prove it to the EC official. But the EC official's job is to allow citizens to vote. We are saying that the NIA by now should have created that system, and note that the NIA is an authority on identification. Now, the failure of the NIA is part of why we are where we are, and I think they should get their act together. That is one.
The
Number two.
NIA replies you that stop saying it has failed because it doesn't. It's not working to any deadline. What it's doing is a continuum. You decided, one minister or is it the cabinet decided that there should be linking of SIM card to whatever, and NIA came to tell you that you can't compare us with your deadlines. The minister is giving deadlines and repeating them. So
the NIA is not a law unto itself, and there can be reasonable measures. Reason says that it should not take this long. It should not take this amount of money. And we know how many cars they are trashing, the number of times we've gone around this. So as for discussing the NIA, that's another matter. But the central point is, if the NIA had done its job, this would be easier. Now, even if the NIA had gotten everything 100% correct, having or not having the Ghana card is not what makes you or does not make you a Ghanaian. So the Constitution requires that if for any reason you don't have the Ghana card, but you can prove that you are a Ghanaian, you have a right to vote. By some other working of the law, certain other things can happen to interfere with that. But the fundamental point should be made that the ultimate success of the EC is to make sure that everybody who has a right to vote, as in is a Ghanaian of sound mind and above 18 years old, etc., gets to vote, even if they don't have a Ghana card. So the Ghana card should help us to do this. Now, the point is, if for any reason you don't have a Ghana card, you have a birth certificate, you have a passport, you have something else which sufficiently guarantees that you are a Ghanaian and of 18 years, etc., 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 the EC has a constitutional duty to make you vote.
Okay, hold on there. Dr. John Osayi-Kwapong, I suppose that Kofi will agree that we are aspiring to get to a system, as you may find elsewhere in the UK, in the US, where we do not have multiple documents to identify a citizen. So if that is where we are aspiring to, what is our challenge with what is being pursued now?
So, Samson, so yes, I agree. The aspiration is great. I don't think that too many people would disagree that a national identification system is a bad thing, right? The whole Ghana card system and linking it to other systems where at some point every citizen has, one key form of identification that they can present for different kinds of interactions with the state, whether they are voting, whether you are opening a bank account, whether you're asking for service from a public institution. That's great. The question is, between now and when we fully meet those aspirations, how do we deal with some of these contentious issues that come up, especially for something like our elections, right? I mean, our elections already are, highly contentious issues in terms of, the issues that comes up, the charges from both sides, et cetera, et cetera. So you actually don't want to compound it by introducing another element that raises the stake. For me, what I see at stake here, beyond just the administrative issue of can everybody who turns 18 between now and 2024 get their Ghana card so they can, be registered as a voter. The bigger issue that I see here is that there's also an issue of trust. In my observation, it appears that our two major political parties have come to somehow believe that their electoral fortunes really depends on the actions of the Electoral Commission. And so you tend to see agitations of who is the EC, and you also see agitations around voter registration and the voters register, and who is getting on and who is not getting on, and what are the processes that get you on there. And so you actually see elements of that playing out in this debate. My belief is that you have to operationalize the Constitution, like you said. I mean, there are certain fundamental tenets that one has to meet in order to be able to vote. How do you make it come alive administratively? And for me, because voting is a fundamental right, you don't want to make the barriers to voting so stringent that you disenfranchise people, right? So my contention would be, okay, between now and when everybody can get the Ghana card and it becomes a smooth administrative process to just walk to an EC office at the district and show your Ghana card and get on the voter roll, are there other acceptable forms of demonstrating that you are eligible to vote and of sound mind? And ordinarily, this shouldn't be that contentious for us to say, okay, Ghana card, but here are some exemptions, right? I mean, in the US, if you are hired on a job and you're filling out your I-9, you can show your US passport, or you can show your driver's license or a state ID in conjunction with a social security card. But we are having this fight because beneath all of this is something we've come to believe about the EC. And I think trust is missing. And we also believe that our electoral fortunes depend on the actions or inactions of the EC. And so from an administrative point as an electoral commission, knowing that you would have to find a ways of working with the political parties to reduce that level of mistrust and make reasonable accommodations. I'll throw in a last point. I can't speak to these matters without citing a little Afrobarometer, right? So you would notice that in Afrobarometer, the Electoral Commission is facing a serious perception of trust in the eyes of citizens. I mean, you've seen trust in the EC, those who say they trust the EC a lot, declined to just about 10%. So all of that is fueling this sort of debate. So when you start coming up with such administrative rules that ordinarily may even seem reasonable, there is already that atmosphere of mistrust that is hanging over your head that makes it more difficult. So for me, it behoves upon the EC to make reasonable accommodations so that you don't heighten some of these issues around already high stakes elections.
All right. Nanaya, first of all, as a political party, you must be excited that the Electoral Commission is rolling out continuous registration so that we don't go through this indignity of having to be joining queues, days, spending precious time, in queues just to get on the register. But what do you say about seeking to limit the identifier for the registration to the national ID card?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Good morning.
please. Good morning.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thanks for this opportunity. Good morning to my brothers. These are my big brothers. So this morning, they are going to bully me. But the point is that the national identification card, nationally, we are saying it's going to be the only form of identification. Even with our SIM cards, you can re-register it with only the national identification card. So if you put this argument in perspective, it means that that card is going to be the only identification you can use for any form of transaction. Even with our bank accounts, they are telling us that now we should come and update our records with the national identification card.
Now, without it, you can't actually perform banking transactions.
You cannot do anything. So it looks like it's going to be the sole identification for every form of activity we do in this country. Number two, maybe you have to educate me. I just noticed that those below the age of 15 don't have the national identification.
They are not qualified.
Why are they not qualified?
That's the law.
Then it means that the law is flawed from the very beginning. Are you telling me that those children from 0 to 14 are not Ghanaians? Because you are telling us that this card is what is going to identify me as a Ghanaian. But you have taken out a certain segment of Ghanaians. At 0, you were Ghanaian immediately you are born here. Father is Ghanaian, mother is Ghanaian. And now you cannot have an identification. So they are not identified.
But at 0, you don't need any identity document to do anything.
Who said? In America, when you are 0, they give you a passport. Who said? Now the vice president is saying that at a point you are going to travel with this document. There's going to be e-visa. So if you are going to travel with your 0 child, don't you need it? No, I mean seriously. 0 to, are you telling me that these young ones, you can open a bank account for your 0 child? You can open a bank account as a way of doing an investment for that 0 child. And it will be in the name of that child, isn't it? If somebody is 12 years, you can do a bank account for the person. And how do you update the person's record? And how does this person access their bank account? So for me, it is flawed. If they are telling us that this identification is for voting, they should let us know. At IPAC, we discussed it. The CPP said that, as Kofi is saying, it cannot be the only form of identification. There should be other forms of identification. But if you look at it, the nation itself is forcing everybody to go that way. And once the nation is forcing us to go that way, what then do you think the EC will do? The EC might have credibility issues. Political parties, they are not trusting them. They might have it, but this issue of the Ghana card, the whole nation is moving towards that. So what do we do about it? And I also have an issue with the National Democratic Congress. The National Democratic Congress, they have decided not to come to IPAC. That is where these decisions are taken. And when the decision is taken, Then they come out and they say that we do not agree. The forum where you can bring out your own issues, you are not there. You sit on the sidelines and you oppose. How is that? Whatever happened between the EC and the National Democratic Congress, we believe it is time that it is resolved. Whoever has an entrenched position should back down for the sake of the nation, because it is not helping us. It is bringing chaos into the political space. Because when EC takes a decision or we go there, if one voice says that we do not agree, another voice says we do not agree, and the majority agrees, what can be done? You cannot insist and say that I do not agree. But you are sitting out there.
IPAC is not a lawmaking body.
It is not a lawmaking body, it is a discussion body. So we go there and our inputs go into a CI. So if you are not there and the CI is brought to Parliament, you don't sit on the fence. And I've always said it. Why are you out of IPAC?
So what was your input as the CPP to this CI that you now clearly state you don't support?
I representing the CPP, we said that we should have other forms of identification, as Kofi Bentil said. Do you get me?
You were outvoted?
We discussed. There was no vote. We discussed. A majority of the people thought that since the country is going towards a Ghana card, then we should all go towards that way. But still, I do not believe that should be so. Now that even this has been reviewed, that 0 to 14, they don't have it. Then what is the essence of it?
Okay.
Because we are also Ghanaians.
Let's hear from the EC, and this is deliberately structured. So we hear from the EC last, and then you will be able to ask your questions or respond to how the EC is thinking about this. Dr. Sribo, thank you so very much for making time to join us. So, as you can see, both the political parties, of course, at this point we can say safely that except the ruling party and perhaps those others that were for it at the IPAC that we do not know about, so far on this table, on this platform this morning, your approach is faulted.
Good morning, Samson and my colleagues. My greetings to everybody. I want to correct you, you yourself, Samson. You have been saying LI, but it's rather CI.
CI,
so I want you to.
CI.
Yes, yeah. You have been quoting LI. And also to my brother Bentil, he says the Electoral Commission doesn't want to be audited. If you wouldn't mind, you can go to the audit service. And as I speak, we are responding to some audit queries that were done just this year. So Electoral Commission cannot say that they will not allow
asset audit. I will come for the asset audit.
You come. I will come. You have not come, so you come and get it.
Oh, we've tried a number of times. So thank you.
Okay. I'm saying come, don't worry. Then my brother Kwapon, to my greetings to you. I'm happy when people quote Article 42 of the Constitution. Forgive me if I get it wrong in terms of quotation because I'm not a lawyer. But it is clear that if you are 18 years and you are Ghanaian, of sound mind, you qualify to vote, therefore we should register you. So I believe that anything that the Electoral Commission will do that will stop people from registering is a form of antithesis, meaning they're going against our own rule. But we should also bear in mind that the law says if you are a Ghanaian, if you are 18 years, so how do we establish that? Do you just, are we saying anybody who presents himself that is a Ghanaian should be registered? He's 18 years, should be registered. Something, if you followed the 2020 election and previous ones, you read that all the confusion surrounding registration is about who a Ghanaian is and who is 18 years. The parties, especially the two big ones, will be accusing one another of having perpetuated the registration of minors and foreigners. So as Electoral Commission, we cannot sit there. That's why we are always adjusting our system. First, we were not using biometric. Now we are going biometric. We want to do anything that will remove the chaos that is associated with our registration. If you go to Article 51 of the Constitution, the article don't say that, and I want to quote, the Electoral Commission shall, by constitutional instrument, make regulations for the effective performance of its functions under this constitution or any other law, and in particular public elections and referenda, including provision for voting by proxy. So the constitution makes provision. The constitution knows that even though they have stated the conditions under which you should register, you need to do certain things to establish the identity of the applicant. So you can't just stand up and say you are a Ghanaian, you are 18 registered. Now, if you take the 2020 registration, I wouldn't want to be quoting, I was mentioning the names of constituencies so that I'll be branded being anti or pro party. But in a particular constituency, when we started addressing some foreigners who had managed to register, 52 foreigners, foreign tourists submitted their ID cards to the Electoral Commission. Through that, they registered through the guarantee system, and they were misdirected or misinformed. So what do we do to stop this? Anytime we compile register, we will spend a lot of days cleaning the register based on challenges and fight and the rest. So we said, okay, how do we improve? We put all these things before IPAC, not the Electoral Commission, before IPAC. And for the last election, we had 12 candidates. This time, only NDC did not attend. And it was interesting to know that even though they have not been attending, anytime we are holding a IPAC meeting, we send them an invitation. When we finish, we send them the minutes. So that at least they will be, even though they are outside IPAC, they will be abreast with what is going on. So we all deliberated, discussed all these things. Then we said that, okay, going forward, I think this is what happened. Samson, I'll send it to you and let me read it for you for the benefit of our listeners. I received this from Dr. Abdul Ghani, head corporate affairs NIA. Now, based on the figures you put across, you are saying that people who are qualified to register now is 19.9, if I got it right. Now, their statistics as at 3rd August. So look at the date, 3rd August. They have registered 70,138,609, and they have issued out 16,567,460. So if you look at these figures, then technically we are left with about 2.8 million to get their cards. And the NDA registration is continuous. So it's not that they have finished, it's not static, it's continuous. And we are also rolling out continuous registration. So it means that while we have 2 years to finish the registration for the 2024 election, they are also continuously registering Ghanaians. So if you put the figures down, we are talking of about 2.7. So are we saying that they cannot use 2 years to register 2.7? So we are of the view that to establish the identity of Ghanaians and their ages, so that our district offices will not become battlegrounds, then let's go by the acceptable way that come with their voter ID card, so that when you come and no party is there, even your Ghana card is an evidence. And again, if you come with a Ghana card, it does not mean that you cannot be challenged. So it is possible that some people might have also acquired the Ghana card through fraudulent means. If anybody knows that, you can still challenge them. So we want to establish this, so that we can have smooth registration, that is a continuous one. Again, initially, there was this argument that we were going to compile new voters register. I want to state it here emphatically, that this is for only those who have not registered. So we are not talking of new voters registration. It's for those who have not registered.
Right.
And by the figure that we get, our interpretation is that for every year, about 450,000 people turn out 18. So that is the target per year. So since 2020, we have 2 years. Therefore, as at now, by our estimation, we have 900,000 people to register. So I don't see why we will be...
So by the time of the elections, you are looking to sort of, is it a mop-up, get an extra almost 2 million people onto the register. Is that the case?
Exactly so.
Right.
Exactly so.
And when do you plan to end the registration process, even though what you are seeking to kick in now is continuous registration? When will it end so that someone may not have the opportunity to register after that point?
Thank you. Now, if you look, somebody quoted Tenadi issue. The Tenadi issue was about not being allowed to register because we said you have finished registration. It's not about identity. So with the continuous registration, that issue is cured. Then again, the law.
So please clarify this for me. That once the window of continuous registration or the regime of continuous registration sets in, there will not be a deadline for people who want to register to get a voter's ID. Is that it?
Yes, you are right. But the law says that when you register less than 60 days to an election,
okay, then
you will be registered, all right, but your name will not be included in that particular election because we need the figures to plan. We need the figures to print.
On that basis, do you have the assurance from the NIA that the some 2 million, a little over 2 million that is left to be registered for the NIA card, they will be able to finish that?
According to them, by the end of this year, they would have cleared them. Because if you look at 22 years ago, they had registered around 6 million. And now it's 17. For 2 years, they have registered about 11 million. So clearly, even though they may not be going the way we want it, they are going. And NIA is doing continuous registration.
Right.
We also want to do continuous registration.
There's 17 million who have registered and there's 16.5 million who have their ID cards. Do you have an idea what number of that constitute foreigners who are not entitled to participate in our elections?
I don't have those figures, but the foreign, according to them, they are insignificant figure. So I have not requested for those figures. According to them, everybody they want to register is around the 19 point now, approximately 20 million.
The main reason you are not susceptible to the proposal for other forms of identification is to cure non-Ghanaians finding themselves on the register. Is that it?
You are 100% right. And see, it's something. The political parties, everybody in Ghana knows what I'm talking about. That every time our residence centers become battleground, and there's no reason apart from accusing each other of raising non-Ghanaians or raising minors. That's the reason why. So if you are not able to cure that, then we are transferring the battle from the polling station to our offices. And that is what we want to cure.
So eventually, if Parliament does not agree to your proposal and brings in other sources of identification, how will you feel about it?
We will feel bad, but everybody will get to know when the relatives dawn on us. Because what we want to avoid, if Parliament does not agree and we go to the final, you see the signs. Then you say that probably if we have listened to the electoral commission, we would have avoided. But let's check from history. Let's check from history. There is a parties who will be accusing each other, not the electoral commission. They will come and even accuse the electoral commission of perpetuating or facilitating the registration of minors and foreigners. Are
you amenable to giving yourselves a last opportunity to use the system as it persists, at least for the 2024 elections, so that other sources of identification will be included?
I mean, Samson, we want to avoid the fight. We want to avoid post-registration, tedious screening and the rest. So for us, and we are convinced that based on the record, where they have, the 70 million were registered from 2018. So we are talking about 4 years. So if they are able to register 17 million within 4 years, why can't they register the other figures within 2 years?
Okay.
So half of 17 million is about 8.5. And we are talking of 2 million.
How many people do we have on the register, the electoral roll?
17.0 something. So approximately 17 million.
So if you were able to take care of the problems of 17 million on the register, and you are looking to take care of the problems of 2 million that will come on, what's the issue? What's the problem? That should be easy for you to do.
We can do that. But you realize that the conflict led to even loss of life and other things. And one person dying, you can't cure it. Just one.
Okay.
I was nobody should lose a strap of hair because of elections. So
Okay.
there are issues that we want to address. No, we should, and the issue, as Professor Kwabon said, is about mistrust.
Okay.
Because if you trust that the right thing will be done, all these things should not be coming up.
Let me allow my guests the opportunity to speak back to you, or as it were, ask one or two questions, and then I'll let Elvis speak before you come in again before we take a break. So, Drs. Kwapong, San Kwapong, Kofi Bentil, and Nanaya, the ball is in your court. Who wants to say what or ask what? Which
I
question?
want to go first. I want to ask a question.
All right, ladies first.
Yes, because as we are talking about the numbers that the NIA has registered, we need to do some exercise. Dr. Sriboy is saying that on the electoral roll, we have 17 million people. And NIA is saying that they have registered 16 million people. How many of these, we should ask the NIA, are eligible to vote? We are making this noise, you haven't found out. How many? Because if you say that you have on the roll 17 million people, it is left with a few to register to get the card, about maybe 2 million. How many of these people are eligible to vote? Because in there we have 15 years. What percentage of the people registered are 15 years? What percentage are 18 years and above? So we know exactly where we stand. But these are some of the things that brings mistrust. You are telling us that you have registered bulk, 16 million people, including 15-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds. How many people? We need to know. Because if we do not know, then it means that the issues are not being discussed thoroughly.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Yes, Kofi?
Right. So I think Dr. Kweku and the whole EC must appreciate something. One, their job, constitutionally given, is to facilitate for everyone who is qualified to vote. It is not to restrict. So that should be clear. And in facilitation, they must understand that a voter ID card is not necessary. It is a voter registration, a compilation, as the Constitution has said, that compile a list of persons who are eligible to vote. To compile that, at the time the law was made for the EC, we did not have a national identification authority. In the hierarchy of institutions, an authority on a subject is the highest body to conduct that. So today in Ghana, the law gives the NIA the power to compile identification. And then the EC should use that. So you can get an extract from the NIA that fits the law as your electoral register. And then the voter ID card is the NIA card. However, if the NIA today unreasonably has not been able to do its job, you cannot say that if the person is a Ghanaian, qualifies on everything, and the person does not have an NIA card, you will not let them vote. That's not your job. Your job is to satisfy yourself. If you read all the airlines, it's there that the polling officer there will satisfy himself that the person is qualified to vote and has not voted already. When you read all these laws together, it means that you cannot make a rule that says without a Ghana card, even if you have everything, you cannot vote. I assure the EC, if they go along this line, we will have a massive problem, because I can see a long line of people going to sue them, and I think they will win.
Yes, John.
You see, and Kofi ended on the note of a potential lawsuit, and that is my worry, that sometimes on some of these issues that I sincerely believe we can find administrative ways to resolve it, because there's always this sort of tension and impasse that everything becomes a legal issue that has to be resolved legally. But even after a legal resolution, we still have to come back to an administrative process to implement that legal resolution. Now, my only question and response to Dr. Srebo is, you cannot always anticipate what would happen as time goes on. So like Samson just asked you, is there a small chance and a small possibility that the EC, given all the conversation that is going on, would be somewhat amenable to the idea that even if the Ghana card is going to be the primary document, they are willing to say, but in the event that we are willing to make some exceptions and allow, let's say, an individual with a birth certificate to register. I understand your concern about the tensions between the political parties, and they are the ones who sort of fuel all of these issues. Every election becomes an election for us to resolve, election integrity issues and ensuring a credible register and putting all kinds of measures in place to make sure that only those who are eligible to vote are registered and can vote. And I understand the EC gets caught in that crossfire. But that's my only question, which Samson already asked is, would you at least consult the gods and say, maybe we are amenable to this?
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Kwaku, let's hear you before I come to Elvis Afriyie Ankra. And I think that question is very central, because if you have done a register of 17 million Ghanaians and you say it is fit for purpose, that you have no foreigners on it, your major concern is foreigners, and now you are going to open the opportunity for only 2 million potentially, and you can't sieve that 2 million to add onto this fit for purpose register, then it does appear there's a problem. You don't agree? Nanaya asked the first very legitimate question. Can we go on? Yes.
There's a problem because it is not easy cleaning the register. So if you can avoid it, why don't you avoid it? That is the issue. Then my brother said, we have to, if we can consult the gods, we would rather consult God, not gods. We would rather consult God.
It's a
but the issue is that for us, we believe that we have 2 years at least to add the approximately 2 million that we are talking about in terms of NIA, in terms of electoral commission.
Doc, please remember that you are talking about an NIA which has gone to Parliament and told Parliament that they needed 300 million to complete their activities, and they have received only 180 million.
Yes, I agree. But upon all difficulties, you and I are agreeing that they have to register 19.9, if that is, figure is right. And they have managed to register 17. So within the difficulties, they are giving results gradually. That's what I'm saying, that we are convinced that if we all focus on that and put our mind on it, that it is achievable, it will be achieved. But for now, Electoral Commission has not looked at the other way. It is only one probably. Maybe we have gotten to the end of 2023 and there are issues, then the Commission may look at it. But for now, we believe that they can achieve them. Even by the end of this year, I believe they will be hitting a target. So we are convinced that it is doable. Let us all focus, put our mind to it, and we will achieve them.
Okay.
Then again,
yes.
If you look at the continuous registration that we are talking about, it is very cost effective because we are not going the rituals of recruiting hundreds of thousands of people. We are going to use our permanent staff. So if you bring in people who will be fighting the rest, you are going to overstress them. Because in a district, you may get about 3 people who are going to do the registration. They will come, and that becomes a battleground. It becomes a tedious issue. So we have the belief, without shaking of any doubt, that it is doable. And
I think what you just spoke about is the continuous registration, which is already provided for in your previous law.
Yes.
It's already provided for in your previous law. So it is not this CI that is going to provide for continuous registration. I think we all embrace that. The last time, before the last elections, I asked you about the continuous registration, when you were going to operationalize it. And your response was that the EC was going to consult with the political parties extensively to have an agreement before you will implement that. Can you say at this point that you have concluded that consultation process?
That's what I told you. We have done a lot of discussions. And as of now, we have even established a team that will go, because after the law has been passed, then we go into the nitty-gritty of it, the details of it, which Nanaya himself is serving on it. And the joy in it is that NDC has nominated somebody to also come and serve on it. So when the law is passed, then we can now look at the details of it, because it's continuous registration. But you and I know that we cannot do it every day, Saturday, Sunday, and the rest. So the committee will sit. That even though it's continuous, maybe every week we can do it on maybe Monday to this and that. So those things will be done.
All right. Let's finally hear from Elvis. And reading Owusu-Ampofo statement, one of the issues that bothers him is that the NDC has not been consulted as promised by the EC. But that's the challenge we have now, isn't it? That you are not at IPAC, and that is the place of the consultation. Is that not so?
Yes.
How else could it have consulted you?
I'll deal with that.
Okay.
It's a major issue, and I raised seemingly legitimate issues, and I'll deal with that, and I'll provide evidence to that effect. But I think I am getting very worried, because Dr. Sribwo is the Director of Electoral Services. Decisions of the EC must be based on facts, statistics, analysis, and data. Now he's saying they believe, they are convinced, they are focused. Is the EC now a church?
He spoke about facts first.
Which facts?
The facts that there are 17,183,609 persons who have been registered, and out of that number, 16.5 million, a little over that, have received their cards. There's just a little over 2 million to be mopped up.
Good. And the key question is that, and you thankfully raised the issue of even budgetary allocation to the NIA, that you're dealing with an entity that you do not have control over. So what if tomorrow, in 2 years, the NIA says, look, we have not been able to. What are you going to do? So it must not be based on belief or conviction. It must be based on facts. And Nanaya raised a question that we had asked way back 2021, that look, what is the total number of Ghanaians, non-Ghanaians registered, total registration figure by region and districts, statistics on document use as proof of citizenship. And Nanaya raised a critical fact. Of the 17 million, how many of them are eligible to vote? Then we'll be having a more meaningful conversation. Secondly, you see, he's using some very false equivalence. He's talking about violence at the polling stations, and they want to avoid. The violence at the polling stations came about because they wanted to do a new register in an election year, 6 months to an election, which was even against the ECOWAS protocols. And there were so many issues. The previous year, they had spent millions of dollars refurbishing their equipment. All that equipment was going to be wasted. So there were issues that led to the tensions. I mean, people who were firing guns, MPs who said they fired guns, they know about them. So it is those conditions that created the tension. So you cannot use that as a basis for a continuous registration that you yourself said will be done at the district level. Somebody turns 18, he goes to the office, goes to register. What is going to be the tension? So it's a false analogy that he's making. The point we are making, and want to make it very clear, is that in terms of registering people, there are international protocols that guide them. Reasonableness. Ghana is not an island. You have your primary document, so that just in case people, for whatever reason, and in this case we have good reason, you don't have control over the NIA. They've not been able to fulfill all their targets over the years. So we've seen a certain trend. So we're saying, hold on, it's dangerous to depend on only the NIA. The law that sets you up says you must create the enabling environment for anybody who wants to register. So why don't you have a backup? a backup in terms of guarantors, in terms of passport, in terms of driving. That's very reasonable.
Because the NIA could fail to get your promise.
So when you insist against all reason and against all logic and against all common sense and against all analysis, then you are now feeding into that suspicion that, look, there has to be some
back
agenda.
To the question I had asked you earlier, is it possible, because if the NDC was in agreement, we would definitely not be having this discussion. Is it possible to have look at a certain cooperative, process?
Okay.
To make sure that there are about 2 million that are not registered, or a little over 2 million that are not yet registered, will register and receive their cards in good time so they can go and register. And I think somehow it's very, is like you say, try logic to agree with you that it is not the absence. It is not the absence of Ghana card for continuous registration that will create chaos when there's a continuous registration. So that analogy clearly is faulty. But are you able to cooperate and look forward to being able to do
recent history, okay? We had a Minister of Communications says, I'm giving a deadline. It's the same, actually. I'm giving a deadline for registration of SIM cards. The NIA says, look, we don't work according to deadline.
That's right.
What would you do to them? They are an authority on their own. You don't have control over them. If, touch wood, it gets to that point and they've not been able to register, what would you do? You would have passed this law already, you see? So there's a certain problem with the logic. Now, let me just read what Honorable Kwame Abuja sent to me. It relates to SIM cards, but it's associated, okay? He says, population of Adaklu, based on 2021 census, is 38,649. Population of those 15 years and above is 24,799. Those who are qualified to get a Ghana card. NIA cards registered up to last month is 2,534. I was saying 20%. This is about 11%. Okay? Breakdown. 1,844 cards printed. 690 cards yet to be printed. How are those in Adaklu expecting to do their SIM registration? And in this context, how are they supposed to get their NIA card? How are they expected to access their bank accounts? How will they get onto a new EC register?
Yeah.
Note that there are many places.
I've heard him ask this question of the NIA boss himself, Professor Kenneth Tefa, and I didn't get the answer to that. So,
and a quick one, just a quick one.
Dr. Kweku,
you know, even with the NIA, when you go to the NIA and you don't have the primary documents, you are allowed to use secondary documents anyway. So what is this thing about this fixation that you must use the NIA in spite of all the facts available to us?
When you take Adaklu, do you see a genuine concern here? 24,000 persons there are eligible, are 15 years and above. And yet 2,500 of them have registered, 1,800 have their cards. So if you look at it, it may seem that there's a certain disproportionate injustice, so to speak, that a constituency like that will suffer in the current circumstances if it prevails. What do you say?
Something I believe this question should have been answered by NIA, because I believe that they have an office there. And if they have an office there, this should not be a challenge. Because the Electoral Commission used 38 days, 38, to raise the 17 million we are talking about. So if now yesterday I listened to Professor Tifa, and he's saying that if the replacement and the correction center, they are moving them to the district from Monday. So if they are activating them, everything on Monday at the district, by the end of this year, 20-something million, 20-something thousand, if they can easily complete registering them. So unless maybe at the Kuru doesn't have a district office. So that is my view. Now, with respect to a few anchors issue of the conflict happening because of our desire to register within election year, he should go back to 1995. That was even the first time and the only time I know that even our staff were assaulted. At that time, we were not talking of this registration. Every time we compile register, the parties will fight over legibility issues, and the end result is that they will destroy materials. In 2016, I was in the Ashanti region. If you go to Odium, so St. Louis people were registering there. If you go to Ginyase, Kumasi High School were registering there. You go to Mampong, Chief Palace, they were registering there. They went there, destroyed all our materials. That was not 2020. I talk of 2016, issue of legibility issue. So we have sat through all these things. And at the end of the day, the laws mandate them to compile the register. So when they do all these things, then they will turn around and accuse the Electoral Commission. Okay. You have done this, you have done that. Now we want to avoid it, you say, you will not agree.
Obviously, now it is up to Parliament to determine whether or not this will stand. And according to our lawmaking process, this proposed CI, if Parliament has an issue with it, it has to be withdrawn. They are not allowed to amend what is tabled. Once it's tabled and they have a fault with it, it has to be withdrawn. You don't amend it. But before it is tabled for the period that it has to last, then it has to be what you expect to mature. We will take a quick break here and return to share with you the views of Ghanaians who are joining this discussion, and then we will ask the question, what you think of the move by the Electoral Commission to quote-unquote sanitize its register of political parties. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. My guest, Dr. Sribo Kwaku, is Director Electoral Services at the Electoral Commission. Kofi Bento is a lawyer and Senior Vice President Imani Africa. Elvis Efriankra is Director Elections, National Democratic Congress. Nanaya Achampim Jantwa is Secretary of the CPP. And also we have Dr. John Osai Kwapong of the CDD. And this program is brought to you, as always, by the kindest sponsorship of Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go, Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. We lead properties. Home is where one starts. Fanat, Ghana, think wood, think Fanat. And Duraplus, where Duraplus goes, water flows. Star Assurance, your solid partner. And St. Thomas Eye Hospital, that is your #1 specialist in all your eye solutions. Now, let me share some of the views that have come through. Now, this one from Broja Jemfi of the NDC. He says that the voters register is not only for presidential and parliamentary elections. It is also used for district assembly elections and by-elections. So for Dr. Sribo to say the NIA can use 2 years to complete its work is moot. They want to disenfranchise Ghanaians on district assembly elections, and we should not allow that to happen. Kwejo Charisma says, please, can you ask them when they are going to solve the mistakes on the cards? In Ghana, living outside Accra is like a curse. I called them one day and they told me to come to Accra before they can do something about it. How can I travel all the way from the Western region like that? And I share your pain. Last week, we showed you videos and interviews with elderly people, one from the upper region, one from Oda. The one from Oda actually could not walk. He was in wheelchair. And the one from the upper east region had chased his card for so long. He had to come to Accra. And even when he came here, there was no certainty that he would get it. That's the indignity that people should not be put through. That one, it ought to be said as it is. Akosia says, if we don't enforce the right laws on what and how our voter registration should be, there will always going to be a ding-dong battle between political parties and the EC as it pans, because when it comes to, so you're using some short language that I can't understand. When it comes,
Generation Z.
when A comes to power, it will do something to disadvantage, likewise, the other. Gasma 1 says, can we have proof of the number of cars they have? That's the NIA printed. Thus far, I'm of the view that the number as published must be verified and analyzed. That's going to be a job. Zon Bank, that's your name? Says, I'm sure we have learned useful lessons from 2020. Fighting the Electoral Commission is not about press conferences or press releases. It is not about going to court. It starts and ends with your MPs and Speaker of Parliament. If they fail, case 2024, goodbye. Samuel Lamte. How we have managed to reduce the credibility of our passport, birth certificate, etc. as a primary source of identification is baffling. Jam Wayo, is it Woya, says, we have already wasted hundreds of millions of cedis on voters' ID for 2020 elections. Someone must pay for this. While other countries are thinking of the next 20, 30 years, we are only thinking about the next elections. We are just not really ready for progress. Peter Doe says, kindly ask Dr. Srebo which part of the law indicates that the EC is to use NIA card. That's what they are seeking to do now. It's not in any law yet. That the NIA is to use Ghana card as the only form of identification to acquire voters' card. And he showed you the constitutional provision where they are empowered to make CIs, constitutional instruments. This one from J. Bequain says, inasmuch as we all aspire to have a smart economy society, the EC must tread cautiously in its, quote, goodwill hastes, end quote, to use only the Ghana card as eligibility criteria for our continuous elections. And Ni Chachu says, why is the National Identification Authority unable to publish a district-by-district breakdown of the registration they did? How are they able to get the total figure on their website without the district figures? So more and more questions. Yakubu Ibn Chamba says, a balanced resolution of the controversy surrounding the registration process is required between the NIA, the EC, and other disgruntled political parties, a middle ground that allows for all parties to have an open discussion on the roadmap towards a perfect electoral system. Perfect, you mean? It is important that the issue of registration and credibility of EC are reignited for discussion since the EC's integrity had been put on the line in bygone times. This is the right time for stakeholders in Ghana's electoral system to find a one-size-fits-for-all solutions to the registration hullabaloo. Okay, I have to end it there. This one from Frank Anderson. Okay, that's a long letter. I have to take my time. I can't read that. It's too long. Let me try. It says that in the UK, we have various forms of identification for voting, you mean, i.e. passport or a driver's license. If you have no ID, a birth certificate, national insurance card can be accepted if accompanied by a countersigned picture by somebody who can confirm your identity, i.e. a lawyer, doctor, nurse, accountant, religious leader, etc. National identification has been turned upside down. Should have started from hospitals where babies are born. every child is born with a known surname. We should be able to create a system in various hospitals with simple application such that once a child is born, vital details are recorded. Thank you for your message. I think I can take a pause here and then bring an important issue. Okay, so someone says you can't cure a problem of tension between people by excluding a major political party. You can't cure a problem of tension between political parties by excluding a major political party from the solution. Dr. Kwapon, this is where I want you to share briefly how you think the problem between the NDC and the EC can be resolved. It's taking, it doesn't look like it's, there's a solution in sight. I thought that by now this would have been resolved.
And I'm wondering if part of it is also hangover, lingering issues from the disputed 2020 elections from their perspective. The only way I can see this thing getting resolved is there has to be dialogue, open, frank, honest dialogue, probably with some mediators as well. Maybe an institution like the Council of State can mediate whatever tension exists between the NDC and the Electoral Commission.
Who should be initiating that?
Who should be initiating the conversation? Good point. I mean, the EC, for example, should, for me, I don't see anything wrong with the EC reaching out to, a body, like the Council of State and saying, look, this issue can't continue forever. We are 2 years up against an election. Would you be willing to play a mediating role? Alternatively, the NDC as a party can also find or look for an institution or certain individuals that they trust to serve as honest peace brokers between themselves and the EC, because otherwise this thing would continue until the 2024 election.
Thank you.
Really don't want that.
Kofi, is this mediation process or something, is it possible, looking at what the NDC's grievances have been, including particularly centered around individuals within the Electoral Commission who will be there anyway?
Yes, it is possible. I mean, these are fine gentlemen. But we need to start from the fundamental. I totally appreciate what Prof. Papon just said, that somebody should reach out to somebody. And honestly, whatever we have to say about the Council of States, this is what they should be doing. That said, the EC is a creature of law. The EC does not need the pleasure of the NDC or any party for that matter. If the EC just does what is lawful, the NDC can choose to stay away, but they won't have an issue. If you take this particular issue we are discussing right now, for instance, clearly what the EC is doing is skirting the law. And therefore, it is not about whether the NDC is happy or not. The NDC is raising legal questions, and they are right. What if people are qualified to vote, but they do not have a Ghana card? Okay, so here's the thing. I think there's a mistrust, and the mistrust has been earned by the EC. The EC needs to work on itself to appreciate that it needs to earn that trust. However, if somebody chooses not to trust you, you can't force it. It should do what is squarely within the law. If you take this case we are discussing, you have CPP here, NDC here, I am a think tank person, CDD is here. We disagree with each other on different things, but on this matter, we all agree, and the EC stands alone. We can show in law why they shouldn't be doing what they are doing, but still they insist. You cannot repair breaches when you have this kind of attitude. So look, EC can reconcile with the parties. It needs to do so. Indeed, it is more or less like a supervisor of the parties, and I think that's what we are going to come to. It should be weeding off unnecessary, institutions.
Okay, thank you, Kofi. Nanaya, you have been sitting at IPAC. This clearly, the tension doesn't bode well going into the next elections, and you can hear the vitriol language. And even in some of the messages that we have received here, we seem to believe that the people who watch and listen to us, they sanitize what they send. But some of the messages, we can't read them because they seem to suggest that if the EC is not careful, something might happen. How do you suggest, this, bridge, this can be bridged, the difference?
There's nothing that cannot be resolved. I believe that whatever the situation is, the NDC and the EC should bury their differences.
How?
For the sake of the nation.
How should they do that?
We have to bring in an independent body like the Peace Council. If you bring in the Council of State, the chairman of the Council of State is appointed by the president. In their mind, the people are already compromised. So you cannot use the Council of State. The Peace Council is an independent body. They can come in to resolve the matter. They started resolving the matter, and I'm surprised at this time it has not been resolved yet. The issues that they are talking about, there's not much we can do about it. Can we go back and say that annul the 2020 elections? No. We have been under the MPP getting to almost 3 years. So it means we have accepted the president is there. We have accepted that that is what it is. So whatever the situation is, for democracy to grow, for us to be together, for us not to endanger the peace of the nation, I believe that we should call it, political parties should call on the Peace Council to come in and broker peace.
All right.
And any who can do it is welcome to do. You started the conversation. I think that moving forward, we should take it further than what we are talking about.
Okay. Dr. Sribo, we didn't advertise that we'll have this discussion, but it just came up. What is the EC doing about this? Are you reaching out somewhat, because you are the institution, responsible, and you need this to happen, as it were?
If you heard me, as part of my presentation, I said that anytime we are calling for a meeting, even though they have not been come, we still send them invitation. When we take a decision at the minute, we send them copies. So we are still there. And they have to come, because the only place you can judge is at a party where all your colleagues are there. Because you cannot be discussing with only one party. When you finish, you bring it to the iPad, and the rest will be very hostile to you.
What I mean is that they have grievances they have made known to you. Resolving that, is that not the case?
Well, I'm not aware of the grievances, because it was started because what they said that I heard was that any meeting that has something to do with the 2020 election, they are not ready to be part. So that is the reference point. So as long as we are calling a meeting to the debate, review 2020 election, anything that has to do with 2020 election, they will not be part of it. And 2020, as Anaya Jantua said,
okay. Let's get to the next issue. But Elvis said, what will it take? Okay. What will it take to build bridges and get over your grievances with the EC and get back there, because you must be there?
Okay, we will be there, but our participation must be meaningful. If the IPAC becomes a forum where you go and the EC will impose whatever they choose, and you can see from even the posturing of Dr. Sribo, they are impervious to other views and perspectives.
Oh, is that what he has done?
Nandaya Janto, I told you, she was in that meeting. She belongs to the CPP. In the absence of the NDC, let's say she represents the opposition. She said, add another identity document. They won't listen. Let me tell you in practical, what has been happening and what precipitated our boycotts, apart from the issues of the election. For some time now, many parties were registered and they started coming to IPAC. We didn't know them. In fact, we are political actors. We know ourselves. Some of the people, we have never seen them before. You don't even know them. They come to IPAC. When there's a critical decision, we express our views. In the past, we express our views, subcommittees are formed, then we arrive at a middle ground. So for instance, on this matter, the position of the EC will be only NIA card. Perhaps the MPP may support them. Then the other parties and us will say, look, add something else. The consensus will be NIA card and then something else. Over the past few years, since Madam J. Mensah took office, what has been happening is that the EC takes a position, comes to the floor, they put it out there, we will debate, bring up all the issues right raise all the arguments. Sometimes civil society supports us. Everybody else, media will support us. The EC will insist. At the end of the day, they will say, let's vote. Or the people will just say, yeah. I mean, this cannot continue.
Okay.
So we go to the meeting and there's no meaningful discussion. Our views are not taken on board. So we cannot be part of an institution where our views are not respected, our views are not taken on board. The EC imposes its views on us, and then we just say, they'll come out and say, well, you are part of it.
It is not the case that you insist on having your way all the time.
No, we always, now let me just give you practical case studies, okay? On the EC wrote to us, asking us to nominate 2 people for the subcommittee on the new constitutional instrument on 7th
the one we are talking
December
about.
12th, 6th December 2021. We wrote to them. We said, we write in response to your letter on 18th November 2021, referenced on the matter of discussions on the draft of the CI on registration of voters, and wish to inform you that FEC has nominated Alhaji Hudu Yaya Esquire and Honorable Daniel Amate as its representatives on the subcommittee. Does this look like somebody who doesn't want to cooperate? Now, what happened? Subsequently, Alhaji Hudu Yaya was called, told about the meeting. A few days before the meeting, he was called again and told that the meeting has been rescheduled. We haven't heard from them again. My deputy, Amate, called Dr. Shrebo Kwaku. And you see, these are the things that they do. And then when there is mistrust, they turn around and say, we don't trust them. There is a reason. He lied right now on air that there's a subcommittee and Anaya is part of it. At what point does the subcommittee work? The subcommittee
You said your
works.
deputy called Dr.
Shrebo Kwaku
and
asked him about the meeting. When is the meeting going to happen? He said, anytime there's a meeting, they will call them. They haven't called them. And yet they finished with this draft and sent it to Parliament. At what point do you form the committee?
Dr. Kwaku is
the
right
committee
here.
says, the committee says, it says what?
Dr. Kwaku is right here.
Let me make my point. It says discussions on the draft of the CI on registration of voters. So, and what has been the practice in the past? That subcommittee needs to look at this draft and makes inputs.
Okay.
But
you made a serious allegation, and
yes,
let him respond.
This is the
accusation.
Document.
Yes, Dr. Shrebo Kwaku. How do you respond to that?
Samson, I would have been happier if FEA will read the letter that we sent to them. As I said, and Anaya is here. Even the CI, it is still there. That there will be the modalities will be discussed by the parties, not the draft. Like I said, the draft was discussed and been discussed at IPAC. So that one is different. But in the draft, the CI, if you look at it, there's a portion that says that the modalities will be discussed by a party, and that's what we wrote to them that they should nominate. And that's what Nanaya is one of them. So the modalities have not been discussed because the CI has not been passed. So it's when the CI has been passed, then now we have the law. Then within the CI, he said that the parties will meet and discuss the modalities, the committee. That's where we ask them to nominate. So we ask them to nominate somebody who will serve on the modality committee, not the drafting. But the drafting was discussed at IPAC. So Nanaya is there, if I'm lying, he will tell you.
But the letter says we quoted discussions on the draft of the CI. And what has been the practice over the years?
That's what you are quoting.
Yes, we are quoting from their letter.
In their letter, no, this is your letter.
Yes, but we are quoting from their letter. In any case, Samson, let's not even go what has been the practice over the years. You cannot thank me, Samson. This is a very important point that borders, it borders on the credibility of the EC. Okay? What has been the practice over the years? Before the CI, the parties nominate people. Obi Amwa, because he belonged to the opposition then, was the chairman of that committee. Hudu Yaya was part of it. They make inputs into the CI before it goes to Parliament. So I don't know what he's talking about. Okay. So these are some of the things that create mistrust. But beyond that,
everything was discussed at IPAC.
So why then did you write to us asking us to nominate somebody? Why then did you write to us asking us to nominate somebody or discuss the draft CI, which has been the practice over the years? Is it that now you have changed this, a new electoral commission, that you've changed existing practice that has served this nation?
Okay.
That we discuss, we make inputs. Are we rubber stamps?
Thank you.
That we will not have an input into the CI. The CI will be passed, then ex post facto will come and discuss the implementation. Does it make sense to you? Okay. You must have an input into the CI.
All right.
Because the CI that will determine how it will be implemented. In any case,
all right. Thank you.
Let me
Samson. I'm coming.
Samson, we had an agreement. Let me make my concluding point. Because I told you I had to leave. I'm traveling out of town. So please, respectfully, we agreed. All right? Because I'll leave. And the rest of them will have all the time. Respectfully, please. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
So, I want to reiterate the issues we have with the NIA card as being the sole document. One, people are traveling long distances. The cost, for example, the distance between Bole and Bamboy is over 3 hours. Imagine a poor farmer in the village has to travel 3 hours. When he gets to the district office, there's no guarantee that even he will get his card on that day. It comes at a higher cost to them. And then people are supposed to pay 250 cedis for express service. I mean, look at this economy. That should be looked at. And the NIA, as I said earlier, accepts guarantors for those who do not have primary documents. So why is it that the EC cannot accept secondary documents? Now, there are some very serious internal inconsistencies with some of the clauses. And the first one is, if you look at Regulation 6.1d, it says that
So it's supposed to be a CI, so it will be a section 6.1.
Section 6.1d. It says that the registration supervisor would make prompt written reports to the regional director of the commission. And that's what Dr. Farijan raised. That why do they write directly to the regional director? It should go to the district director, because the district director is the one who is well versed with the issues.
So it's a CI-based regulation, so it's a regulation.
Okay, so I was correct.
Yes, so we keep to what we say.
Okay, regulation CI is the proposed law.
Right.
Okay. Then you go to 2.1, also talks about location, and we have a challenge with that, because if you look at the commission shall designate the district office, that is related to what I said earlier, that if you're doing the registration only at the district office, and it says any place it deems appropriate, based on our experience, especially during the last registration, because these things were not clear, we had situations where, again, a place like Adaku may have only 2 BVDs, and Swami will have 14, 20. So it's important that there's clarity on those issues. And then 33.1. Yeah, okay. It says the CI 91 is revoked, and then CI 126 is revoked. Then listen to 3, and this is some lawyers have raised.
CI 91 is what was made in 2016.
Exactly.
To guide the 2016 registration of voters, and CI 126 is what was made to regulate 2020.
Then it says, despite the revocation under sub-regulations 1 and 2, the existing register of voters is saved under these regulations until a new one is compiled by the commission. Some legal people are saying there's something wrong with this language, because this language can open the room, okay, after the CI is passed, for the EC to also create a new register. Because the legal language, you are the lawyers. The lawyers have spoken to this. It's not very clear.
It's very normal.
But some lawyers have raised issues about it.
Okay.
And knowing the history of this EC, we don't want to take chances.
Okay.
Now, we, after the elections, went to courts, and we had a 7-0 unanimous. We decided to do electoral reforms. Nana Tudazi, Professor Kwamina, where we engage civil society, media, Christian community, Muslim community, did a thorough job. Subsequently, we wrote to the Electoral Commission and gave them a copy of our proposals. They acknowledged written receipts, and said we'll be hearing from them. Since then, the EC, we haven't heard anything from them. They are not telling us anything. So if people are saying that we are not engaging the EC, in spite of the fact that we are not an IPAC, we felt that the platform...
They have been clear with you that they had organized a review of 2020 elections, platform, which you didn't participate.
Okay.
And that is where you ought to...
So the biggest opposition party with 137 members of parliament, their views are not important. That's what you're saying.
I'm telling you what they told you.
Yes. So does it make sense to you? that our views are not important. So if that is their position,
I don't want us to get to other
no, it's related, because Nanaya said, why are we not coming back to IPAC? We're saying that the EC should write to us, telling us that we should engage. Somebody is talking about engagement. Let's engage on the reforms.
Unfortunately, I will not be able to give the EC time to rebut anything.
After every election, it is not the EC that does a review.
All right.
You cannot write exam and review your own
thank
exam.
you. Since you are leaving us,
you understand me?
In 1 minute, what will you say about the move to, check the defaulting parties? Because you certainly are concerned that too many of them are springing up and being used to vote against you at IPAC.
They heckle us. They make noise. Yeah. So let's see.
What do you say about that?
The proof of the pudding is in the eating. We're waiting to see how the EC would implement that in a very fair and firm manner. I want to see it done in a very transparent manner. And I believe that if that is done, there will be no problem.
Thank you. We'll
but
take a
with
break
this
here. We'll
particular
be right back to deal with the question of what the EC is doing
I measure them by their
as
actions,
to defaulting parties and moribund parties. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, brought to you by Bank of Africa, MTN, Ashesi University, Robert & Sons, Optical Services, Waylead Properties, Fenat, Ghana, Think Wood, Think Fenat, Duraplus, Star Assurance, your solid partner, and St. Thomas Eye Hospital, your #1 specialist in all your eye solutions. Now, let me get to Dr. Sribo Kweku right away, because he clearly has a right to respond, however briefly, so that we don't miss the other very important issue that we have to discuss, which also concerns Nanaya very much, and Dr. John Osai-Kwapong, those who are watching the democratic space. Yes, Dr. Sribo Kweku, what's your reaction to what...
Okay. I think a few three issues that briefly I want to talk about. The first one is respect to the supervisor. The news here very well. You know that it is the district officer who has been labeled as the supervisor, because it is the district officer who will do the registration. So in the CI, once it's been done at the district office, the district officer is the registration officer and also the supervisor. So the supervisor cannot write to the district officer when he's the same person. That's what it is. The supervisor will write to the regional director, because the district officer, when compiling the register, becomes the supervisor. So that is the explanation. Two, we said that the registration will take place in the district offices and any other place the commission may determine. My village in Anansu is about almost 80 kilometers from Inahimi. So what we have put in the law is that in the course of the exercise, if it is realized that maybe Bamboy people will find difficult to Boli, it will come to us. They will say, okay, create another center there so that they can respond to those who are not able to go because of their distance. That's why that clause is there. And the last one about the revocation. Something, if you have the CI 91, you can read the revocation, but if a woman will read. Revocation and service, that was CI, which was passed in 2012. It says that Regulation 33, Sub-Regulation 1, the public elections regulation of voters, Regulation 2012, CI 72, is hereby revoked. The Sub-Regulation 2, despite the revocation under Sub-Regulation 1, the existing register of voters is saved under these regulations until a new one is compiled by the Electoral Commission.
I'm sure you heard me. I'm sure you heard me tell him that is yes, very normal in law making.
But he was disputing it. That's why I want to read the law.
He's saying that some lawyers. He's saying that some lawyers have a different view. Let's wait at the appropriate time if those lawyers will tell us what exactly the alternative view is, because this is traditional in law making. So this is the proposed law. Now, just a couple more messages, and then I have you speak to the questioning of what you are seeking to do, clean up your register. And Ernest says that what should happen is never again should a sitting president be allowed to change the electoral commissioner. It breeds too much mistrust. It has never happened before in the Fourth Republic. Same with Domelevo, and that is why we are where we are. Musa Abatoa from Asawase in Kumasi says the EC shouldn't behave as if they have a birthright to decide who qualifies to be a Ghanaian, because Article 41 is clear. The decision to use Ghana card as the only means for identification in a layman's approach is clearly wrong. Their interests must always be in the collective interest of Ghanaians to exercise their franchise and not appeal to any authority. All right, thanks for that. This one from Osei Kofi Akwa. He says that he is the National Youth Organizer for the CPP. He says that both the Electoral Commission and the National Identification Authority should embark on continuous registration. Apart from a lot of people being underprivileged to get these forms of identification, a lot of Ghanaians are turning the age of which they are legally allowed to possess these cards. Making these registrations seasonal is wrong, and very soon people will start going to courts. Well, as for the court, you always be told that that is where you go. Mba Inwa says that the NIA municipal office in Bolgatanga has not printed cards for the past 1 week because they have no empty cards to print, no electricity. 3 days to the deadline, they had no cards to print with the long queues at the office. How can the EC then rely on this inefficient system to demand that this is the only means to prove that you're a citizen to be registered for elections? And finally, Raymond from the immigrations gives me an education that in Ghana, a child, in fact, a 1-month-old child is issued a passport to enable the children travel with the parents. And this is a form of identification. So Madame Nanaya Jantua is correct about that. Thank you very much for your intervention as well. So let's begin with Kofi Bentil on this matter. We know that there are political parties on the EC's website that we only know on the website. Beyond that, we don't know them anywhere else. There are some that we know. We only know them by the individual that asserts that he or she is their presidential candidate. So 27 of them are sitting on the EC's website as political parties at 2021. 1992, we had 13 of them. 1979, we had 11 of them. 1972, we had 12 of them. 1969, we had 5 of them. And 1957, we had 8 of them. What do you say of the process that the EC is embarking on?
So, again, the Constitution is clear that the EC has to clean up the list of entities that consider themselves political parties. The EC serially, over many years, refused to do so. And in the process, I can say that the EC constituted that whole scheme into something that they will use for their purpose. And that is what you see on IPAC. And I mean blunt, Mr. Siboko should explain here. There can be no reason why a political party, which by law should not exist, should be allowed by the EC to sit in meetings with the MPP or NDC and have the same vote as them. I am waiting for the argument that trumps this viewpoint that we have held, that only political parties who have, one, ever been in government, and two, have a representation in parliament, and three, have submitted their necessary papers, including audited accounts, should be on IPAC. Why I'm saying the EC has constituted this into something that they use is that, how do you allow all these parties into a place like IPAC, and they show up in other places? For instance, at Imani, we refuse to deal with them. How do you allow them to be in IPAC after you have arguments from NDC, you have arguments from NPP, arguments from CPP, okay? Then you have these people vote and make nonsense of their participation and their arguments. If I am NDC, I will stop coming. And I say this because this has gone on despite all kinds of protestations, and there is no reason why the EC is doing so. I can speak to the fact that we also obtained in 2018 a ruling, a judgment that says they need to enforce the law, at least on political party accounts. They have refused to do so. So EC clearly has designed its own system, which is unlawful, by which it allows certain entities, including one-man parties, parading as national political parties who don't have offices anywhere, even much as, say, in every region. Even in Accra, we don't know their offices. And they allow them to parade and have the same vote and make arguments and basically ultimately lead to EC doing whatever it wants to. When you do that, you would have the credible participants in this process leave like NDC has left. And I don't see why we should again allow EC to continue to do so. It must obey the law, clean up that register, so we have a meaningful dialogue among the political parties who essentially are the ones who run this country, not the ones who
the parties you are talking about that the NDC is complaining about. There are those who also say, but why? When the NDC was in power, they encouraged some of these, because once you are in power, you need, some of these parties to be there to go to IPAC to help you get the votes. So they actually sponsor them.
It is easy. You see, political parties do everything they need to win an election. They don't have morals about that. Winning the election is the ultimate. But the EC is a legal institution which has laws and rules, and there are ways of doing things. So if you are EC and you let NDC come and tell you what to do and you do it, let MPP come and tell you what to do and you do it, you have become a lawless organization. And I have all these problems with EC because, look, they keep threatening this democracy. Mr. Sribo Opaku should tell us why one-man parties, we don't have offices even in Accra, okay? Whether they are working for MPP or NDC, why they allow them to sit in IPAC. And this is why NDC, which is a credible party, which could end up being in government because they've been in government many times, has left a very important forum. This is the undoing of the whole system. Okay, so whoever is using whichever political party, it is EC that has to clean it up. And the law, including the constitution, gives them sufficient power to clean it up. Why are they not doing it?
Dr. Sarkwapong, the Political Parties Act 2000, Act 574, is what actually dictates these things and empowers the EC to take the steps that it is taking. In fact, there are actually consequences that those parties that are defaulting should suffer, but we've never seen them suffer any of those consequences, including cancellation of the provisional certificate that they give them. But Section 9 requires that they must have branches in all regions. It's a requirement. To be a political party in Ghana, you must have branches in all regions. Then you must have presence in 2/3 of the districts in each region. And then you must have at least a founding member in each district. What do you say about what they are doing now? Even though, even from Afarijan's time, they didn't feel that this was something to focus on.
Well, the law is very clear. I don't know why, as Kofi said, for all of these years, the EC may not have enforced this law in dealing with these parties. If you look at the law clearly, I believe that the intention behind this was to ensure that our political parties would have a national character and not be sort of like a regional-based party or a district-based party, that kind of a thing. So for me, this is, although belatedly, I think it's the step in the right direction. In fact, I'm glad that the EC is doing this, because one of the things that I have also said I look forward to the EC doing one day is also strongly enforcing the provision about the audited accounts of the political parties. Yes, it may mean that you would decertify certain political parties, and yes, it's not easy setting up a political party with a national character, but the business of forming political parties, although challenging, is also very serious business. So I agree with the move of the EC to ensure that you have, the parties that are formed meet the letter and spirit of the law, and then they are not used and abused like Kofi was describing in certain avenues.
So that, we have these mushrooming, some people call them the nuisance parties, or even people setting up the parties for private business, so to speak. Now, so that if the exercise that the EC is undertaking leads to a result where you have only NDC and MPP, or perhaps CPP, PNC, and maybe the Indus Party, PPP, only left on their books, you will subscribe to that? Does that help the nurturing of the democracy of, ideas?
I mean, I will be okay with that. I mean, if we are not okay with that, then we need to change the law. We need to change the law that allows for certain deviations of parties with national character. But for now, if this is the law, we often say that laws don't work in Ghana, and then when an institution wants to enforce the laws, then we sometimes end up raising some of these things. But again, I will be okay with that. It just says that, look, we are not against the formation of political parties. In fact, if you look at Afrobarometer, 7 out of 10 Ghanaians do say that we need more political parties so Ghanaians can have a choice in who they vote for and who represents them. That's a very good signal. You just have to make sure that whatever party you're forming meets the law and has that national character. And the EC being the institution charged with ensuring that you meet those requirements, I believe they are taking the step in the right direction.
Doc,
if it means more political parties, that's fine.
Doc, is it the third force Ghanaians are clamoring for, or more political parties? Is it quality or quantity?
I think I believe it's quality. I think also sometimes a little quantity doesn't help. If we end up with 4 or 5 political parties, that's great. But ultimately, in most multi-party democracies like the style we have, you'd end up with 2 very dominant political parties. But kudos to the EC. Like I said, the next thing I'm looking forward to is political party financing and enforcing the rules around audited accounts of political parties. So kudos to them.
Right. Dr. Sriba Okweku, I'll come to you before I go to Nanaya. And I have my biases, and I think you already know them, because at the CODEO high level post-election stakeholders review that is held after every election, in the last 2 occasions, I have presented papers, and on these, in these papers, I have castigated you for being derelict in enforcing the law, particularly in this area, and where the law requires for accounting by the various political parties, and there are clear sanctions where non-compliance attracts a fine from any amount to a maximum of 120 million Ghana cedis. And we see most of the parties, they are guilty, almost all of them, and yet you never apply this. The individuals too could face up to 2 years in prison for the infractions that they engage in. You never cancel their certificates, and the established parties, so to speak, are also not, complying with the accounting regime, and yet you never do anything about them. Question is, why now?
Something I would have been happy if Nanaya had looking before me.
I want Nanaya to hear you before she speaks.
Okay. So first, from Dr. Fejan's time to date, it has been the policy of the Commission that we should allow the democracy to grow. Because if we are to be striking, then we may end up not having any political parties to exist to perform what the democracy was all about. But after 30 years of practice, we are thinking that we have grown, that any political party that wanted to grow would have grown with our democracy. So now there's a committee, and I happen to be the chair of the committee. So we've gone to the field, all the districts, to gather our data on the party activity offices at the district and the regions and the national. I've given my committee summary of the results to the commission. We have prepared our draft of the report, and I believe that God willing, by the end of the next week, the report should be ready. And I also want to say that the coming into office of the current administration, they have also established the legal department, and now we have a good team there. They have also reinforced developed some template for the political parties to even guide them about how to present their accounts, because by law, after 3 months of election, they have to present their expenditure and where they came from. Then annually, they have to bring the audited accounts, and some of them had submitted them. So we are going to look at the issues with respect to party organization in terms of offices and the finance. Then the commission will take a decision. And I believe Samson, as a lawyer, I'll be disappointed if any political party will come and defend them when we strike.
When I'm called upon to do my work, don't talk about where I stand. Thank you very much. Nanaya, what do you say about the move? Because there are people who feel that, parties with a lot of rich history behind them that have been in power before, but because of the NDC, MPP, sort of swallowing up some of these smaller parties, so to speak, it disadvantages some of the smaller parties, and they may fall victim. What do you say?
Thank you very much, Samson. All I would say is that the EC is trying to implement the law vis-a-vis the issue of trying to let democracy thrive. Because as we were speaking, it came out clearly that we might end up with maybe 2 parties, which becomes a duopoly, and already the duopoly Ghanaians are dissatisfied with them. So I believe that they are doing it in the right direction, and that the moribund parties, some parties are just not there. You can't find them anywhere.
Right.
They only come up maybe during elections. Even at that, you can't even find them. But they are there in the books. So they are doing that in the right direction. Also not forgetting that they need to let democracy thrive. They need to let multi-party democracy thrive, because we cannot be in a situation where we have only 2 parties. That is a very dangerous situation. Already, these 2 parties are trying to muscle out any other party that tries to rear up its head to overtake them. So certainly, it is a good move, but as they do it, they should also consider certain things, especially political party financing. The political parties, as we stand, we look for our own funding, which is not an easy thing. So they need to also consider it. But my biggest problem when I read the provisions is that in the Constitution, Article 55, Clause 9, the one on the constituencies or the districts, it says that we should be organized. And I need some clarity from the EC, and we've asked this question. We had a lot of debate over it. What does it mean to be organized? They were very specific with the original one that you should be present with offices. But when it came to the district, they say you should be organized. And what does it actually mean to be organized? Especially in this day and age of digitalization, of social media and all that. What do you mean if you say a group should be organized? And we believe that there should be clarity on that matter. All of us, It is not only when we had the argument, both MPP and all of us talked about it. So I think the EC should come out with some clarity. If there's the need to also look at the Constitution for us to amend it in a certain way, for it to reflect the context in which we are. This Constitution was done in 1992. It's over 30 years. And at the context at the time, what was existing, we need to also look at that.
But what the EC is relying on now is the 2000 Political Parties Act. That is where they draw the strength to do what they are doing.
I mean, when you read the old one and this one, the difference is not much. It is like the 1979 Constitution to the 1992 one. When you look through it, the differences are not much. And even if it's 22 years, we need to look at it carefully. And also, they should bring clarity to that clause of organized, that you should be organized in 2/3 of all the districts. Dr. Ise should tell us what it means, because we had the argument, we talked about it, we didn't come to a conclusion. But at least the move is good, that they need to take out some moribund political parties to send a signal that if you are not ready to be part
just hold on briefly. I have Sribo and Dr. Kweku, Kofi Bentil, they are putting their hands up. I suppose they want to give the clarity. Section 9 of the Political Parties Act 2000 speaks that they should have branches in all regions. That's clear enough, is it not?
That's clear, very clear.
Then C says at least have a founding member in each district. That is also clear. So Nanaya is asking you, Kofi, you are a lawyer, what does it mean to have presence or be organized in 2/3 of districts in each region?
So Samson, the laws of interpretation are simple. You take the ordinary meaning of what is written. And we need to make this point very clear. The law does not force you to have a political party before you can stand for election. The law supposes that if you want to be a political party, to organize a government and want to show yourself as organized so that people will give you value for that, then just like you're going to appoint regional ministers, you are going to appoint over 4,000 people across this country, and you are going to have to do so many things on a national scale. Please show us some indication that you are capable of doing that. So it is what it says. Be organized there. And then the law allows you, if you cannot do that, go. So you have one man.
I think Nanaya raises a very important question, which can lead to a discriminatory or exercise of discretion. What does it mean to be organized in those places? Where it says you must have a founding member, that's clear enough. Where it says you must have branch, that is clear enough. But organized, what represents organized?
So again, rules of interpretation. Organized means you must have some sort of a presence. And in this day and age of Zoom, I would allow some latitude on that. Okay, so this is where EC can engage them at IPAC, making sure the important political parties are there, and then they define functionally what organized means. I am not one of the people who believe that you must be present in every district per se.
All right.
So it's clear. But please, Samson, the argument that EC is using this to foster democracy is a flawed argument. Indeed, this has the effect of damaging the democracy. To allow people who are not by law political parties to function as such and have the vote.
Let's have Dr. Sribo Kweku pronounce on the question of organized in the districts. Yes, Dr. Kweku, what do you say? What does it mean? Does it mean if I have one member in the district, I'm organized, or what?
Yeah, Samson, Nanaya will agree with me that as part of the registration, we always give them forms to indicate where we can locate their offices in the districts. So if you are registering, you agree to complete a form to indicate that this is where your office is, that we can come there and see you and communicate with you. Then when you form a party and you finish, will you collapse that office? So as far as the electoral commission is concerned, organizing here means that we need to see them physically, that they are having offices there. And again, there was a statement that we vote at IPAC. To the best of my knowledge, we have never voted in IPAC. We judge and we move forward. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, this is where we draw the curtains because our time is up. And we are very grateful to you, our guest, Dr. Sribo Kweku, Director, Electoral Services at the Electoral Commission. Kofi Bentil is lawyer and Senior Vice President, Imani Africa. Elvis Efrie Ankra was here earlier, Director of Elections, National Democratic Congress, and Nanaya Achimpem Jantwa, a General Secretary, Convention People's Party, the CPP, and Dr. John Osai Kwapong, Political Scientist, Democracy and Development Fellow, CDD, Ghana. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini. Have a good afternoon.